everyone, Jim here. Welcome to my channel, Mystery and Mayhem. I hope everyone's doing well in this heat. We've got a lot of rain last night, so I woke up to find a big puddle in my car, puddle of rainwater in my car. But yeah, that's something I'll have to deal with. But I hope everybody's staying cool. I'm going to talk about Rocket Summer in this video. I just finished reading The Best of Stanley G. Weinbaum. Really good book. Now I'm not really, my go-to isn't science fiction. When I was younger, I read a lot of Star Trek novels. Enjoy sci-fi movies, but in retrospect, really compared to everything else, I haven't really read a lot of sci-fi. Philip Jose Farmer, I read his Riverboat series. I've read Fred Saberhagen, a lot of Fred Saberhagen, and some Roger Zelazny, a lot of his books. So, but, it's not really my forte, science fiction. Although I do have a lot of science fiction books on my shelf that I haven't read, and first and foremost being a lot of these best of books, with these anthologies. Now, I finished this yesterday, and I really enjoyed Stanley G. Weinbaum. And just to preface this, last video I was looking in the copyright page of this, and I kind of wondered why the stories were only published between 1934 and 1937. And that's for a very good reason, because Stanley G. Weinbaum died very young. He died at 33 years old in 1935, and I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know much about him, but he had only published 12 stories in his own lifetime, and 11 stories posthumously. So, which is a real shame, because he was a really, really good writer. I enjoyed this immensely. When he wrote his first story, A Martian Odyssey, he immediately became probably the first and foremost science fiction author of his day. And part of the reason for that, a very important part of the reason for that, was because of how he dealt with extraterrestrials in his stories. Now, before he came around, aliens were kind of dealt with in a very human way. They were very human-like in their motivations and their behavior. There was weremen and catmen and beastmen and that kind of thing, and they weren't very alien in their creation or their composition. But when Stanley G. Weinbaum came around and he wrote A Martian Odyssey, the aliens in that story were very set apart from humanity. They were beings unto themselves, and the one character in that story, it deals with 4 spacemen who travel to Mars, and they're exploring the surface of Mars, and the protagonist in the story is a chemist, and his name is Jarvis, and he comes across, as he's exploring the Martian terrain, he's walking, his ship has crashed, and he comes across these 2 aliens where one is eating another one. There's these black tentacles that are coming up from the ground, and they're wrapped around this other alien. It's almost a bird-like creature, and it's killing, the black tentacles are killing this other creature. So he at first isn't going to interfere, because he doesn't know how dangerous either one is, so he stands back. But then he notices that this alien that's being eaten has a satchel over its shoulder. So to him, that implies that it's an intelligent creature, and probably an advanced race. So he takes out his weapon and he kills the black tentacled creature and saves this other bird-like creature's life. And so it goes on from there that this creature is very thankful, for Jarvis saving its life, and it decides to carry on with Jarvis on his journey across the Martian landscape, and they try to teach each other the other's language. Well, Jarvis can't understand a thing he can't understand a word of what this alien is saying, but he decides to name it Tweel, because that's all he could get from this creature. But the creature Tweel understands quite a bit of what Jarvis is trying to teach him. So he has a very rudimentary understanding, and he's able to communicate with Jarvis. And actually, he's able to convey some very, very high-ended ideas with just the words that he knows. So he's able to communicate with Jarvis in that way. But Tweel acts, his behaviors are very alien. The way he looks is very alien. The way he talks is very alien. Like he could launch himself 150 feet into the air, and he has like this nose that's almost like a beak, but it's also flexible. So it's described as a combination between an elephant's trunk and a bird's beak. So he's able to launch himself into the air, and he buries himself, his nose in the earth. When he comes down, he spears the earth with his nose, and so it just very odd behavior. But the two characters have bonded. They're good friends, and they actually end up saving each other's lives throughout the story in different ways. So it was very enjoyable, and I can see why it's so well respected as a story, and from that moment on, Stanley G. Weinbaum was a first, a well-respected science fiction writer, and from that point on, most science fiction writers wrote their extraterrestrial characters like this, with alien motivations and alien behaviors, and it just, science fiction at that point took a step forward. And many of the stories in this anthology are prophetic in their own way. I mean, it was really kind of amazing, what Weinbaum wrote in these stories in the 1930s, and the things that he kind of prophesied in more or less in one way or the other. In one story called Pygmalion's Spectacles, he basically describes virtual reality goggles. I mean, the way that they're described as how they work is a little wonky, but the final result of what these spectacles do, I mean, he's describing virtual reality. And this was written in the early 1930s. And in another story called Shifting Seas, he writes about what the world would be like after a natural disaster that sinks Central America, where the Panama Canal is, and the Gulf Stream area, and the Gulf Stream, and where it meets the Pacific and the Atlantic meet. That's affects the weather and the world environment. So when Central America sinks into the ocean, and the oceans shift, so that basically what happens, the result of this shifting of the oceans, is that most of Europe becomes an Arctic tundra, and it's, he's talking about the environment and what could happen if things go wrong globally. Again, in 1930, it was just kind of amazing to read, and I have a quick passage to read from that story about some, what might happen, with mass migrations and war resulting from this cataclysm. And the one character speaking, and he says, "And as for a great new purchasing public, your portable wealth is gold and paper money, isn't it? The gold's all right, but what good is a pound if there's no British credit to back it? Your great new public would simply swell the ranks of the unemployed until American industry could absorb them, which might take years. And meanwhile, wages would go down to nothing because of an enormous surplus of labor, and food and rent would go sky high because of millions of extra stomachs to feed and bodies to shelter." Now, does that sound familiar? Yeah, a little scary, a little chilling reading that story, actually. So that a very interesting story, and there's a story called The World of If. and he propounds the idea of a multiverse in this story. He doesn't come out and say it's a multiverse, but basically there's a camera that can look into alternate realities, like what would have happened if you had made this decision. And so he doesn't come out and say that this is a multiverse, but basically that's what he's talking about. Well, they're not your typical cold sci-fi technical stories. There's humanity in them. So I really did enjoy that book. And the book I read before that, I think I dealt with in my last video, was The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells, which I really enjoyed too, and I've read that before. So probably the next thing I'll probably carry on reading the best of books. And I'm not too sure which one will be the next one I read, but I will look at the copyright pages and see which ones were written in the 40s and probably just read a whole bunch of them. And I will talk to you guys about that when I'm done that. And as I said, I hope everyone's doing well. I wanted to give you an update on what I've been reading and what I've been up to. I picked this up the other day, since I'm talking to you. I picked up Ray Bradbury's Dinosaur Tales, which is the beautiful, like almost brand new paperback. And I was happy to find this. Actually, my wife found it for me, and it's full of illustrations. There's one story in here that has these beautiful illustrations throughout by William Stout. And these are all as the title suggests, all dealing with dinosaurs, because Ray Bradbury loved dinosaurs, and that's kind of what prompted him to become a writer, was watching the original Lost World movie, I think he said, and the original King Kong. So anyway, I hope you guys are doing well, and I will talk to you very soon. You guys take care. Keep reading.